G'day mate, 40 here. So I was looking at some news about Dr. Anthony Fauci. Noticed that he's been consistently moving the goalposts with regard to herd immunity and the vaccine. So he started out talking about a week or so ago that 60% of the audience of the country got vaccinated, that perhaps 60% would be enough to achieve herd immunity. And in subsequent interviews, he talked about 70%. Then he started talking about 80%. And he started talking about 90%. And so he kept shifting the goalposts. And he acknowledged why he was consistently shifting the goalposts on herd immunity. Because it had something to do with public policy. He was trying to convince more people to take the vaccine. So he thought if he started off talking about 60% herd immunity, that would incentivize people to take the vaccine. And then he shifted to 70, kept upping it, hoping to persuade more and more people to take the vaccine. So obviously he didn't think of it as lying. And if it was a lie, it was a noble lie. And just got me to think about how much of public discussion is dominated by noble lies, right? Remember when COVID hit in March and Dr. Fauci and all the other experts were telling us that masks didn't protect us, that there was no need for the general public to wear masks, that masks were even destructive because they'd give people a false sense of confidence. And so you had the top medical officials in the country telling us don't bother wearing masks. I mean, it was crazy. Like, I don't know much science, but to me it's obvious that wearing masks, certainly inside when you're around other people, as many people have been doing for a long time when they have a cold or a flu, it's basic common sense. When you're inside around other people, you definitely want to wear masks. Now, when you're outside, not sure of the cases as obvious, but it's weird. The Surgeon General is going on national television saying there's no need to wear masks, that it's even counterproductive. I mean, crazy talk. Come on. Now tell me this is ugly. Right? This is beautiful. It's Christmas Day in Beverly Hills. Right, look at this luxurious vegetation. Bright blue sky. Not a cloud in the sky, mate. Look at that. Lovely palm trees. About 68 degrees and sunny. It is clean and fresh. And what? Oh, look at these beautiful sidewalks. Okay. So all the top health officials in the country were essentially, lying to us. No, Luke, follow the pause. No, I don't want to creep anyone out that I'm following them. I'm not like Baked Alaska. I'm not going to start spraying people with mace. Come on, man. Okay. These are slightly cracked sidewalks. It's from the tree roots. Okay, a little bit of a hiccup. But then, about a month later, all these same experts, they were talking to us about how it was essential that we wear masks. So in March and April, they were telling us no need to wear masks. And then a month later, they were telling us absolutely essential that we wear masks, that it's irresponsible not to wear masks. So I don't think their knowledge changed. I think what changed is that they wanted to have a certain effect on public policy. And so they would change what they were saying to affect public policy, right? Which then produces a lot of distrust, right? The average American, he's gonna be a little more suspicious of what the experts say. Yeah, the social contract is that we wear masks. I agree. But for weeks, all the top medical officials in this country were telling us there was no need to wear masks. And they did this so that the masks that we had could be rationed for healthcare workers. So they were lying to us so that healthcare workers would have the masks. But lies come with a price, man. Yeah, lies come with a price. Makes people more distrustful of our medical officials, of our government, of politicians, etc. If they're lying to us to not wear masks or then to wear masks. And then how many other noble lies do we have going on in public policy? That made me reflect. Now, doctors do it all the time, I think. Many people wear masks in the United States. Yeah, say in California, most people inside wear masks. Masks are mandated, so people are supposed to wear masks outside when they're driving. If they get stopped by the cops, they're supposed to have a mask on. So masks are mandated in California. So LA is currently the epicenter. Our emergency rooms are filled, overflowing capacity. But in California, Latinos apparently are 100 times more likely than Anglos to come down with COVID-19. So I think this relates to how many people live in a house or apartment and whether you have a job that requires you to deal directly with the public. So people who are earning $60 an hour or more, they generally can work from home. So they are at much less risk. People who are losing their jobs are generally earning $20 an hour or less. So you can get to the beach in about 10 minutes. I mean, the streets are empty. The streets are absolutely empty. Look at this. Okay, let's have a look at the chat. Yeah, obesity rates. Social contract is we wear masks until we all get the vaccine. Look how empty Olympic Boulevard is. Now, do you think those wide streets are ugly? Like 3 wide lanes going in both directions, meaning that you can get to downtown or you can get to the beach in about 10 minutes from Beverly Hills. I think that's pretty swift. Look at that beautiful sky. So, how much faith are people going to have in, say, Medicare for All when they see how the vaccine is being doled out in an anti-white manner? That because, say, Latinos are 100 times more likely than Anglos in California to get COVID, therefore they should get the vaccine first, when old people, of course, are the most at risk. So what metric do you want to use? Do you want to use the metric of most lives saved? Or do you want to use the metric of most years of life saved? Or most productive quality years of life saved? Because most people, say over 70, they tend to pay into the tax base much less than they take out. People must associate wide streets with suburban strip mall areas, hence the negative feelings. Yeah, I don't sense that. Like, wide streets to me means easier transportation. That means you can get where you want to go more easily, and you have more choice about whether or not you want to drive or take public transportation. Luke Gimbal Ford, flossy weather brag video coming out. Looks good. Yep. Thanks, Mr. Art Bell. You encouraged me to get the gimbal, just about $80 on Amazon, and I like it. And I'm sure my viewers appreciate it too. Nice steady Nice steady cam. So one thing they don't tell us is like what's the average age of the person who dies from COVID-19 and how productive were they prior to dying. And also not talked about is how it's obesity that puts people great risk. Stevie Nicks, tell me lies, tell me lies, tell me sweet noble lies, right? So now we have the vaccine being doled out on the basis of woke activism. Like there are Pokemon diversity points that are determining the CDC's guidance on who gets the vaccine. At work, I've only known 2 fat chicks to get COVID-19. They recovered within a couple of weeks. So, yeah, if public health is of such enormous importance, then why wouldn't we have more messages encouraging people to lose weight, get in shape, do the things they need to do to reduce their obesity and their blood pressure? Man, this is Christmas Day in Beverly Hills. Isn't it gorgeous? So, how much are you going to want Medicare for all when, say, care is doled out on the basis of diversity Pokemon points? When you see that vital healthcare, such as vaccines, are doled out according to the dictates of woke activism, and that if you're white, you got to get to the back of the line. All right? So Mickey Kaus was tweeting about this. Mickey Kaus supports Medicare for all. He doesn't like the woke, lefty, anti-white activism by the CDC. Is in real life streaming a new direction for the... Now, I've been doing it for over a year, but the gimbal is new, and I've also been doing more of it in the past month or so. So I think I've gotten away from doing regularly scheduled shows. Instead, I just do shows when I want to, when the inspiration hits. So this morning, like I got up, I went to bed last night at before 7 p.m. I was just feeling really tired. So I just got into bed, listened to the first part of that ESPN 30 for 30 podcast, I think season 5 on the Donald Sterling fiasco. So Donald Sterling was probably the most despised owner in the NBA. He presided over the San Diego Clippers, and he had a string of girlfriends, and he had one girlfriend who was really nasty to his wife. And so the wife ends up suing the girlfriend on the basis that all the property that Donald and she own, it's held on a shared basis. So all the millions of dollars that Donald was giving to his mistress, that was, half of that was money that belonged to her. She did not agree. Like Donald Sterling had given this woman a $1.2 million property, condo. He'd given her 2 Bentleys and 2 other expensive cars and hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of jewelry. And so his wife of 50 years sued and objected, created trouble. And then V, this Latina woman who's having the affair with Donald Sterling, she's tape recording the phone calls, and she told Donald that she was tape recording the calls so that the virus has wreaked havoc among migrant communities. Yeah. So it depends on your overall level of health, I'm sure, and how it's, in large part, it's an IQ test, right? Higher IQ people are less likely to contract it with deadly effect, all other factors being equal. So yeah, I got into bed before 7 p.m. last night, listening to this podcast on this Donald Sterling affair. Like his mistress is like telling people, the San Diego Clippers organization, that she's going to be the new Mrs. Sterling, and they're going to be reporting to her. She's throwing her weight around. And on Christmas Day, Mrs. Sterling runs into the mistress at a Neiman Marcus. She goes to Neiman Marcus to return some clothes, and she runs into Donald there with his mistress V, like some screaming match at Neiman Marcus in Beverly Hills ensues. And then V, to get revenge, she releases excerpts of her taped conversations with Donald to TMZ, where he is objecting to V posting pictures on Instagram of herself with all these black athletes. Like he keeps saying, why do you want to, publicize pictures of yourself with blacks? It's just not classy. And she says, well, what do you have against blacks, Donald? Most of your players are black. And he says, oh, I don't have anything against blacks. It's just not classy. And so she's taping, and so she's just accumulating blackmail if she doesn't get what she wants. So she finally releases it. And the NBA, of course, is 80% black. Got Adam Silver, a Jewish commissioner, and they take action and immediately chuck him out of the NBA. So yeah, I got into bed before 7 p.m. last night. Started listening to that podcast. I was falling asleep by about 7:30 p.m. And the rest of the night, I played this book on the Roman Empire. So I drift in and out of sleep while listening to a book on the Roman Empire. Finally, I was wide awake by 5 a.m. Got up about 5:15, took a shower, got on my 12-step meeting, and 6:30 a.m. every Friday, even on Christmas Day, I talked to a program friend about recovery. So my topic this morning was character defect of inconsideration. Like when I'm inconsiderate to myself and to others by not paying attention to details. And then there are nasty repercussions. So I take a little time to mourn the repercussions. Then I do some research, see whether I really do need to pay up. What are my options? Then I take steps to deal with the problems that my sloppiness have created. And then I work on how I can reduce these problems happening more in the future, but I don't take a direct assault on the character defect of inconsideration. Instead, I just work the overall 12-step program, get in touch with my higher power, and as a result, increasing my level of recovery, then I have, a reduction. God, my higher power comes into my life and gives me the strength that I need to lead a more responsible, more careful, considerate life. So anyway, after I had that conversation, it's like I wrapped it up early, so I wanted to get a live stream about it. So I don't live stream so much anymore on schedule. I just live stream when I have ideas that I want to discuss. So right now I want to discuss the idea of the noble lie, how much that has affected public discussion. Like the media, academic elites, political elites, medical elites, are telling us all these noble lies to try to get us to act in pro-social ways. But the cost of this is a dramatic decrease in social trust. Right? We don't trust our elites nearly as much as we did 20 years ago, 40 years ago, let alone 60 years ago, because they lie too much trying to get COVID is an IQ test. Right? Whether you get COVID and how damaging COVID is to you, just like driving, it's an IQ test. So drivers with an IQ around 90, they're twice as likely to die in car accidents as drivers with an IQ, say, over 105. It's based on an Australian Army study. So all of life is an ongoing IQ test. People who are stupid are much more likely to slip and fall, hurt themselves. People who are stupid are much less likely to watch what they eat, make sure that they get enough sleep and exercise, right? So you can basically determine or measure one's social class status or social class statuses in the United States on the basis of how much sugar people consume. So the lower classes consume the most sugar, the upper classes consume the least sugar. Yeah, Chad says he got COVID at some point, no symptoms. So I presume Chad's a young, healthy dude. Chad, are you a fatty? Like, do you have type 2 diabetes? Do you drink, a ton of sugary cola, or do you take good care of yourself? If you take good care of yourself, you're much less likely to suffer ill effects from COVID and the rest of life. Like a high IQ bloke, he can, in real live stream, he can walk down the street, he can check the traffic, he can obey the traffic laws, stay out of trouble. Mental illness would also play into a car accident. Yeah. But what about other noble lies that we're told in public policy, such as that, everybody is equally gifted, right? That's crazy. 50% of people are less intelligent than the average. I'm slim and I stay away from sugar. Excellent. That's Chad. He'd always be avoiding. With a name like Chad Shatson, I bet that he looks good and is healthy. Yeah, Chad, he's ABA. Always be avoiding sugar and other unhealthy things. I wonder if we'll see any celebrities out and about today here in Beverly Hills. Maybe we'll run into Paris Hilton. Okay. So it seems obvious to me that different peoples have different gifts, but the official narrative denies this, and so we have this narrative that everybody should go to college. I mean, that's ludicrous. Historically, in America prior to World War II, I think but only about 5% of the population went to university. Same in England and Australia, that if you would even go to university, this signaled that you were highly intelligent, and this signaled that you were middle class. Going to university didn't make you middle class. It was a signal that you were middle class. And now, I think America's got more love of education or more delusions about education than any other country of which I'm aware. It's like more prevalent magical thinking in America than anywhere else, of which I know, that supposedly a college education, according to the contemporary mythology, this is your ticket to middle class life. And that's absurd, right? You'd be much better off learning a skill, learning a trade. Most people, right? Only the top 5% cognitively need to go to college. Otherwise, learn a trade. So that's a noble lie, that everyone needs to go to college, that everyone could benefit from college, right? Most people do not benefit from college. For most people, it's a waste of time. And then there's the noble lie that, I don't know, everybody needs 12 years of high school. In Australia, most people would leave after 10th grade. Like, that's enough formal education. And another noble lie is that if there are disparities in life results, that's a result of systemic racism. What about the idea that different people have different gifts? Like, there's this fear among our elites that super rich kids go to college, smart working class kids learn a trade. Yeah. So there's this fear among our elites that if we recognize that different peoples have different gifts, that then it will make us blasé about differential incomes. That we'll be blasé about different life results. Well, in America, Latinos have longer life expectancies than whites. But I think Jews have the highest life expectancy of any ethnic group in America, followed by East Asians, then followed by Latinos, followed by whites, and then finally followed by African Americans. So we've had dramatic instances of the White Death. So perhaps whites don't breed well in captivity. Their fertility rate, their reproduction rate has gone way down. With the White Death, we've had this massive increase in opiate rates that particularly hit the white communities because the Mexican black tar gangs did not want to sell to blacks. They considered them too violent. Like, when is our Attorney General finally going to address the racism by these drug-dealing gangs? And what are some other noble lies that dominate our culture? So I think after the 2016 election, Democrats and their media friends propounded the lie that Russian interference cost Hillary Clinton the 2016 election, that Russia essentially hacked our 2016 election, giving us Donald Trump. And then the media didn't say that Russia directly hacked voting machines, but the way they presented the collusion interference narrative, a lot of like regular Americans, they got the idea that the voting machines were hacked. And so you had the left side of the political spectrum who were just absolutely convinced that the 2016 election was not legitimate, that it had been hacked. And so that was the grand collusion narrative that led to the Mueller investigation. Yeah, Latinos in America have a longer life expectancy than white Americans. That's after the explosion of the White Death in the past 20 years. So maybe all the anti-white narratives have had an effect on white birth rates, on white suicide rates, on white drug addiction, and the White Death. And so it was pure nonsense that Russian interference was responsible for Trump's election. Yeah, foreign countries do meddle in the American electoral system, just as America meddles in other countries' electoral systems, but it wasn't sufficient to account for Trump's victory. And now, after the 2020 election, even though I'm unaware of strong convincing evidence that voter fraud cost Trump the 2020 presidential election, it seems like Republicans overwhelmingly regard the election as illegitimate. And radio talk show hosts and TV opinion hosts on the right are kind of feeding this narrative that Joe Biden's win is not legitimate, that he somehow stole the election. And I haven't seen strong evidence that this is true. What I think is it's another example of what people on the right are seizing as a noble lie, that this is a way of rallying the troops to reduce cooperation and increase resistance to Joe Biden. So people on the right think, we are the resistance now. So this will rally the troops, promote esprit de corps, and so it's a noble lie that people on the right are using. So Jonathan Haidt, social psychologist, he says that there are certain basic truths that both sides of the political spectrum deny. So on the right, they deny global warming, man-made global warming, and on the left, they deny the reality of racial differences. These are basic scientific truths that each side is denying. So let's say that man-made global warming is threatening the globe. So I don't know enough about the topic to know if it's true, but let's just say it is true. Then the right is denying it to reduce government interference in the economy, and the left denies the reality of racial differences to promote government policies that try to ensure equalities of outcomes. So both sides promoting their own separate but equal, perhaps noble lies. So what are other examples of noble lies? Look at those wide streets, how attractive. Come on, man. Really, you think this is ugly? Look at these beautiful palm trees. Beautiful blue sky. Wide open streets. You can get to the beach in 10 to 15 minutes, or you can get to downtown in 10 to 15 minutes from here. Get over to UCLA, go for a nice walkabout. You can go up to the Hollywood Hills, Mulholland Drive. So, oh, look at these beautiful eucalyptus trees. Just like Australia, mate. Oh, love my gum trees. Look, I really think I hurt your feelings by my thoughtless quip about LA. No, it's fuel. It's fuel. No need to apologize. It's fuel, mate. You synthesize very common sentiments, so that's why I'm using it. It takes a lot of energy to live stream. Okay, Art Bell, Luke, what about a job as a cop? 500 officers shot in Baltimore, no actionable plan at street level. Okay, let's have a look here. Street level, last 13 days, 19 homicides, 30 failed motor shootings in Baltimore. Okay, so it takes a tremendous amount of energy to live stream. And so I look for things to trigger me. Don't have any thoughts on the Nashville bomber yet. So, but getting back to Elliot's comments, so I look for things to trigger me, to give me energy, enthusiasm to live stream. And so Elliot's contempt for the ugliness of LA and his pity for people who live in LA, and his comments about the ugliness of the wide streets and the car culture. And LA is not as dramatically beautiful as San Francisco. Like, San Francisco is the most beautiful city in the world. So I need things to build on, right? I need things to get me going. And so I think that Elliot's comments about how he has pity for people in LA is good fuel, not because it reduces my happiness level, but because he articulates what's a very common sentiment. Why don't you fly up to San Francisco? I'll drive you around. We can do a compare and contrast. Yeah, should be a fun stream. And as soon as we all get the vaccine, well, who the hell doesn't like wide streets and easy parking? Exactly. Come on, man, cut out the malarkey. So absolutely, San Francisco is more dramatically beautiful. Those palm trees get rerouted up in Northern California like at truck stops. So when I drive to Sacramento, I get depressed. So Glib Medley feels depressed, suicidal when he's in Los Angeles. Now, look at this beautiful vegetation. Look at this. Oh, you can grow anything here. So Glib gets suicidal when he's in LA. I get sad when I drive near Sacramento. So though it's nothing about the inherent qualities of Sacramento that cause my sadness. It's just the sadness with my experience in that place. So I left the Napa Valley after 8th grade. For most of the next 15 years, I'd been in the Sacramento area, in Auburn, 45 minutes north of Sacramento, up the Interstate 80. And I guess my recollections of those years are pretty sad. So I had a lot more happiness in Napa Valley than I had a lot of sadness in Auburn, Newcastle area, the foothills of what are the mountains? The Nevada mountains. Not Nevada. Blanking on the mountain range where Auburn and Newcastle were. So when I just get around that geographic area, I start feeling sad. And when I get close to Pacific Union College and Angwin, Napa Valley, I just start feeling happy because I just have so many happy memories. But it's not the inherent geography or the width of the streets that does it. It's my experiences in those locations. But anyway, Let's talk about noble lies. Higher ocean temperatures in SoCal for the win. But I remember I went back to Australia in May of 2014. So it was the middle of winter there, and I went swimming in the ocean, and the ocean temperatures were about 70 degrees. The ocean water was about 70 degrees. It was just magnificent in the middle of winter. So I don't swim that much in the ocean here, maybe once a year. But the water's a lot more polluted in Santa Monica, Venice, than it is in Australia. Okay, so what are the noble lies that dominate public policy in America today? So I think denial of group differences, so expecting that there should be identical outcomes between groups. I think that's the dominant lie. We've been told a lot of lies about COVID, which have then produced vast distrust of the medical establishment, distrust of the vaccine, distrust of the lockdowns, because leading doctors, academics, politicians are frequently being dishonest with us to try to get us to behave in ways that they see as noble. And then what about, we've got all the lies about how pornography causes rape and violence, right? And so it's a noble cause to try to reduce the consumption of pornography or to stigmatize pornography, but to tell the lie that it's a massive cause of rape and violence is just bogus, right? Countries like Japan, countries like Scandinavia, with plenty of access to pornographic material, including S&M porn, have comparatively low rates of rape and violence. And then countries in the Middle East, Muslim countries where porn is illegal, they can have massive rates of sexual violence, other forms of violence. So, noble cause, try to stigmatize pornography, but you tell lies about it. You cheapen public discourse, you make people's thinking less clear, and it increases social distrust. So prior to Vietnam, we tended to have much more trust in our elites, tended to have much more trust in our politicians, tended to have much more trust in the news media. We tend to have much more trust in each other. And now that trust has gone away. People are much more likely to support violence to achieve political ends. The center cannot hold. The best lack all conviction, while the worst are filled with passionate intensity. I think one contributor to this has been the rise in the noble lie. Yeah, 90s politicians would blame inner city violence on video games and TV, right? Bogus. So plenty of middle class kids are listening to rap music, watching TV, playing violent video games, but they're not going out and committing rates of violence. So I do think that certain vices have a much more damaging effect on people with lower IQs than people with higher IQs. As Adam Smith said in his 1776 book, Wealth of Nations, that there are vices that for lower class people, they'll be absolutely fatal if they engage in them, such as drunkenness and fornication and adultery, that middle class and upper class people can engage in selectively with very little harm. So it is possible that some of these vices, for some personalities on the edge, may prove to be absolutely fatal. And so much of the public discourse and the lockdown measures with regard to COVID, they have to dumb them down to deal whether it's the stupid people who are the most likely to get COVID. And so everyone has to pay the price because we have so many stupid antisocial people in this country. Look at these beautiful white streets. Come on, tell me that's ugly. Does that look ugly to you, mate? Whoops. There we go. Ah, being around the gum trees makes me feel like I'm back in Australia. So let's talk about the eucalyptus question. So eucalyptus trees emit this substance that kills other plant life around it. So eucalyptus here are an invasive species. Yeah, what about, so Voltaire would say, if he wanted to talk about the existence of God, he'd send the servants out of the room. Voltaire said he wanted his servants to believe in God. That way he'd be less cheated and less deceived. Oh yeah, the eucalyptus question. So eucalyptus are not native to... Why would anyone want to abandon this subtropical region? Exactly. It's beautiful here. So eucalyptus trees are not native to Southern California, but Southern California vegetation overall has been benefited by the importation of other plant species. And eucalyptus trees are beautiful. They do consume a lot of water. So there are problems with eucalyptus trees, and they do outcompete native vegetation. So a eucalyptus tree good? Well, if you want to preserve your native vegetation, you may have some concerns, right? You may need to limit, you may need to have restrictions on eucalyptus trees so you can preserve your domestic plant life. So it's kind of like immigration policy. Yeah, what about the palm tree question? So palm trees, I guess there are problems with palm trees. Some people find them ugly. They're also iconic, Southern California. Anyway, so invasive species is like invasive peoples. You want to allow a group, whether people or plants, into your land that are not native to it. I think you have a right to use discretion, to use care, because invasive species and invasive peoples, they may outcompete your own group. They may drive out your own group. They may effectively poison your own group. It's like eucalyptus trees poison competing forms of vegetation. And there are all sorts of invasive species that wreak havoc on the domestic plant life. So care, discretion. I was watching that Ripper documentary on Netflix, and you just see how much damage one bloke can do. Like, it's a 4-part documentary series on Netflix, and this one bloke, the Yorkshire Ripper, murdered about 13 women, injured another half dozen or so, but he terrorized north of England for years. So one guy just does such enormous damage. So you want to be very careful who you admit to your country. Like, one guy can hold a city in terror. We had a rogue cop in Southern California about 6 years ago. He was shooting and killing people. Then in the course of trying to apprehend him, the police were opening fire on innocent people. So one guy, one bad cop, held Los Angeles in terror. Yeah, the DC sniper held that city. Look, fly up to Northern California, we'll pick up Northern Hobbs and Sacramento. You two can have a debate on the JQ, and we can talk about the native flora and fauna. Beautiful. If I came up to NorCal, I'd want to drive. I love driving, man. I love driving up the one freeway. The one freeway is just gorgeous. Yeah, DC sniper, 2 joggers. One was an illegal immigrant and terrorized the whole city. So I think we need to be much tougher on juvenile delinquents, because juvenile delinquents grow up to be adult delinquents frequently, and they wreak disproportionate amount of damage. So and for very tough restrictions on juvenile delinquents. To me, having kids should be a privilege, not a right. You should have to prove your pro-social bona fides. Right? Why should just any jerk be allowed to reproduce? So I say give all girls at age 11 Depo-Provera shots. It lasts for 5 years. And only if they demonstrate pro-social tendencies are they allowed to go off Depo-Provera. But kids who are cruel to animals, kids who commit crimes, we need to be much tougher and much more restrictive with them, because they grow up to wreak such enormous amounts of damage, and just one bad apple can terrorize a city of millions. So be very careful with who you let into your country. Be very careful. It needs to be much stricter tracking of juvenile delinquents. Be careful who you allow to reproduce. In what kind of society does a jaunt through empty commons precipitate a rant about forced sterilization? Are you okay, Luke? I am great. You could compromise and meet up in Monterey. Yeah, Monterey is gorgeous. I want to preserve the beauty that we see. Government agency responsible for permitting people to have kids be like, so you made a racist tweet 10 years ago, I'm afraid you aren't eligible for reproduction. So yeah, there are a few downsides, there are a few dangers. Yeah, what if you could tell, you could tell in embryo the odds that someone was going to be a murderer? Like, they got the warrior gene. If you bring up some troubled inner city youths to the wilderness, they'd probably be prone to killing small animals. So what if you could test people in embryo and find out about their odds if they grow up to be Hitler, or grow up to be a murderer or a rapist, or what are the odds that they grow up to be on welfare, disability? What are the odds that they grow up to have some horrible, debilitating disease? So there's a famous United States Supreme Court ruling back in the 1920s that stated 3 generations of imbeciles are enough. I think this will soon be possible because genetics influence personality traits. Yeah. So we'll be able to have genetically modified babies so that parents can choose the Okay, so what do you think of the dominant noble lies that dominate political discourse, media discourse? So I think group differences is one. A lot of lies about COVID to get people to initially not buy masks, then to buy and wear masks. And then many of our restrictions are overly intrusive, overly intense, because we have to deal with half the population being below average in intelligence. So, because we got so many stupid people, we have to have all these restrictions that are unnecessary for more intelligent people. So what are the other dominant noble lies that are polluting the public discourse? That we need immigrants for our GDP. Right? GDP is a really bad measure of economic well-being. So There's nothing wrong with multiculturalism. Yeah, that's a noble lie. There are no downsides. So how about an honest discussion? What are the upsides? What are the downsides of multiculturalism? What are the upsides? What are the downsides of diversity? And what are the upsides and what are the downsides of speech restriction? Like every public policy has upsides and downsides. So might want to look up the word noble. Okay, I can't look up the word noble right now. I am live streaming. Why don't you look up the word noble for me and post it in the chat? So I'm sure it has something to do with noblesse oblige. It used to be our social betters found it responsibility. Biggest noble lie in America is that anybody can make it. Yeah, that's true. So noblesse oblige, what happened to that doctrine? Anglo-Saxon doctrine that social betters have an obligation to those who are less fortunate. Is this doctrine of noblesse oblige? Is this as dominant in America today as it was, say, 50 years ago? Noble means being of high social standing and deserving it. So it used to be that the two things the Republican Party stood for was a muscular foreign policy and lower marginal tax rates. So do you think Donald Trump will be able to affect lasting change? So he ran in 2016 on a populist message, but not in noblesse oblige refers to the social duties associated with being higher class. But he didn't run so much on a populist message in 2020. Noble lie is a lie that elites tell to common people to achieve social harmony. It's a good definition. So what would be like a winning political message for Republicans going forward? So trade restriction, right? The key states are Michigan, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Pennsylvania. All right, so Republicans need to design a winning message for these states. So to revive the Rust Belt industries, maybe trade restriction, spending on infrastructure, immigration restriction, and perhaps universal basic income, and perhaps even Medicare for all. I'm sure Donald Trump wouldn't be opposed to Medicare for all. Noble lie is when your wife asks you if she looks fat and you say no. So maybe COVID shows us how much we need universal basic income. So rather than subsidizing nonprofits and gender programs for Pakistan and Afghanistan, I'd have liked to have seen a bailout package where every American who was earning, say, less than $75,000 in 2019, that they got $1,000 a month during the pandemic. Maybe it's time to move to universal basic income and junk other welfare programs. Maybe that would be a winning populist message. Instead of people having to go on disability to get essentially universal basic income, just give universal basic income. Trade restriction, immigration restriction. You need a winning populist message for 2022, 2024. It's withholding truth in the interest of not causing undue harm, which is noble. Yeah, I mean, certainly in your personal life, that's important to do, but in public discourse, I don't believe we should be withholding truth. except in the rarest of, say, national security instances. So in your private life, yeah, you should often withhold truth for the sake of cohesion in your life. But in public policy, not so much.